It's still the 21st of May, 1982. Dr. Robinson, we want to change gears on you for a while before we have lunch today and talk about you as an athlete, a student athlete in high school, a student athlete here at Baylor, and your general interests in athletics. And we know there are many topics that could spin off from this. At what point in your life did you begin to think that you might be a collegiate athlete?
Well, I was 4 or 5 years old, started throwing a tennis ball at a bent coat hanger hook on the mother's hall closet with both hands trying to. And I played all kinds of sports, 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. What's that, 6 days?
How early did you begin to think that perhaps
College?
a college team might be for you?
Well, by the time I was a sophomore in high school, they were saying, you've got it. And they talked me into staying over a year. We really had a great team in '44 at Paschal High School in Fort Worth, and were beaten by 1 point by the state champion Sunset team. They won, and they beat us 1 point. And so they talked me into staying over and said, you'll have better offers. And if you will stay over a year, we'll win the state championship. Okay, I said to O.D. White, the principal, I'll deal with you. If the day we win the tournament, I can go off to college. He said, you got it. I don't think that he thought we would win. It created a great ruckus in Fort Worth with the school board, because the day after we got back from winning the championship in Austin, I walked in his office and said, I want to take my American history or Texas history test. I'm going off to college. And he just turned white as a sheet, because now the deal was going to be known. And it was known. I struck the deal. I kept my bargain. We won the state championship, and I wanted to go to college.
Some athletes, and you may have been one, some athletes enjoy activity in more than one sport. And we know basketball was your number one sport. Were there other sports that interested you before you came to college?
Yes, I think I read somewhere where I made 17 letters in high school. I did everything. I was even starting in on the football team, quit because it's boring.
Well, I wanted to get it on the record today
Right.
that
But
there were other sports that interested you.
Track I could do, and I swam backstroke.
What were your
and
events in
loved
track?
golf. Well, I ran, at first, my best event, I was told I could be the best quarter miler in the country. I ran a 49 flat from a standing start when I was a freshman in high school, and then lay down and vomited so long down in Austin at the stadium. I said, I'll never do that again. So then I ran dashes. I high jumped. I even threw the shot. I won the district meet throwing the shot put. So I just loved it all. You name it. If you want to throw nickels up against the wall, I'll beat you. And that I loved it. I was bored with football.
Why did football bore you?
It's boring. Put the stopwatch on it. And, I just stand around. They'd tell me what to do. They didn't have to tell me twice. They'd say, now you go down and try to block that fella, and then they'd tell this one and tell, and then finally they'd snap the ball. And it doesn't last 3 seconds. And I just was bored with it. I played tennis. I played golf, left-handed on the golf team. We won the city. I just loved it all. But now, that's one.
Why did basketball appeal to you most of all?
It is almost like a gift from God. I could play. I could play it, and I knew it. And
to what extent was it coaching?
oh, it was a great deal. But I think that if it's almost like a gift from God, then you know how you learn a sport is by imitation. Coaching is wonderful.
Who were your models in basketball?
Bobby Moore's. You never heard of him. Bobby Moore's All-American from the University of Texas, 5'10". I mean, I'd see him play at night, and I couldn't sleep. And I'd get up against the wall. There wasn't anybody to pass a basketball to me as long as I wanted to pass it. So I'd do it up against the wall. And I'd cut it, and bounce it, do all of those things, make all those moves I saw him making. And you learn by imitating. And then I was very fortunate in the three coaches I had before I came to Baylor, unusually fortunate after I came, and then even later on the Olympic team and so forth. But I had a PE instructor that coached a junior high team. First game I played in, I shot the wrong end of the court. It didn't matter. I was wild, man. I was going to shoot. And but he was a PE instructor who later headed at Colorado A&M. He headed the physical education department. Roland Balch, and he taught us
last name
Balch, and he taught us fundamentals. Started us on fundamentals, even to the point of saying when you throw a ball, your thumbs go out. You know, you don't find many junior high coaches going at it that way. Then the next one I had was a fundamental nut. He taught to the extent, did you know that you don't catch a ball like this? It may look like it, but if you catch a ball like that, it goes through. You catch a ball like this, so there's something behind it. Well, now that doesn't mean it's like this exactly, but you've got to get a little something. And he was a marvelous. He taught us basketball. I never needed fundamentals anymore. But then I had a coach, Charlie Turner, that you've read about. Dan Jenkins has written about him in Sports Illustrated, and all of us play. He taught us how to win. You can be great. I saw great Baylor teams. Could beat anybody. On Saturday and twice on Sunday. They didn't know how to win.
What was Charlie Turner's secret there?
Get an edge. Teach how to get an edge. I always thought I had an edge in the last 2 minutes. I don't care how tired you were. I knew you had to be tireder than I was, because you couldn't have run up and down those steps in Rena Mars McLean as many times as I. You couldn't have worked out any more hours than I did. Almost like Gary Player now in golf. But he taught us to get an edge. There are lots of ways to get an edge.
You played guard. Played outside.
I jumped center in high school. I was the center. Can you believe that?
Well, tell us about that. We know you went to the outside.
Well, I jumped center in high school, and we won the district 3 years in a row and won the state title, and they said, this is the best player that's ever played in the state of Texas. But I did jump center, and our coach, he didn't have any sense.
You played post also?
Sure, I turned my back to the basket. I did that in college. He didn't even send in our record, so we weren't seeded in the state tournament. And we had to claw our way through it. And then it was another world after that. Because that was the first time, that I had really gone on to the national, the Associated Press scene and interviews and all of that. I could walk down the street. My world was never the same after we stole the state title in '45. And then's when the offers came in from everywhere.
That's my next question. From where did the offers come?
From as far away as LSU, Oklahoma, UCLA, you name it. Feelers.
What did you do when you were contacted by those schools? What did you think first?
Well,
time?
insofar as I wasn't going there, I was coming to Baylor. But insofar as possible, I went to visit them. Everybody liked to date cheerleaders, and I went to visit them. That blew their minds. You see, I had been contacted by Ralph Wolf very early, even before that year, and I could have come to Baylor the year before. Well, if I'd have come, they lost 22 straight games the year I would have come.
How early had Ralph Wolf begun talking to you?
Sometime in the winter of '44, and Baylor was having no teams then except basketball, and they lost 22 straight games. So if you're athletic director, what do you got to talk about? and he talked about my daddy and himself, and they were on the track team together and played basketball together. He was making the contacts, wisely breaking the ground for the later things that happened. But from the first, you see, I said, okay.
Yeah,
Well, all athletes will say okay and goodbye, but I was telling him the truth. And then after we won the state and everybody was after me, then I said, I'm coming. And then the phone rang off the hook. I heard you were at SMU last weekend. Did you go down to Texas A&M? Were you ever at Rice? You know, why, they gave you money and a free trip. So we went, and I kept telling him the same thing. And he brought Mr. Bill, Coach Bill Henderson, R.E. Bill Henderson, to the house to meet my mother, and so forth. And we told him the same thing.
What were your first impressions of Mr. Bill?
Well, he sure was different from Charlie Turner.
In what ways?
Well, Turner, would slam you up against the wall and tell you what to do, and Mr. Bill would try to say, don't you think you ought to do this? Do you think we could beat them if we did that?
How did you respond to that difference?
No problem. Mr. Bill was not good at teaching fundamentals. That's not to put him down. You really shouldn't have to teach them a lot if you do a good job. If you play from the time you're 5 years old, you're pretty stupid if you don't know fundamentals when you get. So you see, Johnson and I came in from Pascal, the two freshman guards in '46, fundamentally sound. We were better fundamentally than the seniors that came back and made the rest of the team. So we knew the fundamentals. It was just putting the team together. That was his genius.
I was going to ask,
The mix.
if Mr. Bill then was not the teacher of fundamentals and you had come from a coach who was tough in teaching fundamentals.
I came from two that really knew fundamentals and then one that taught us how to win. Do anything.
I was going to ask then, what attracted you to Bill Henderson?
No, I was coming to Baylor.
You had already made the commitment to
It was
Ralph
not
Wolf.
to Bill Henderson.
So your commitment
I'm
was...
coming to Baylor. Yes, I'm coming to Baylor. And I told him so, and then he got nervous and came back, and then I cut a deal. I don't know if this has ever been told, but...
What do you mean by a deal?
Well, it happens all the time. I said, yeah, I'm coming to Baylor, and I got somebody I want to bring. And they just jumped right over the coffee table when I said Johnson and the coach had a fight last week. And he said, I'm going to play for that SOB. And I said, well, let's come on with me. And he said, okay. So he was going to stay over a year, so got him. And then I cut Pulley into the deal, Ralph Pulley, who's a very outstanding attorney in Dallas.
Johnson's
now.
first name was?
Bill Johnson.
Just wanted to get it into the record.
Great guard on that freshman team and right on. And I then pushed Ralph Pulley into the scene, which never hurt anything. Ralph never started, but he was actually captain here one year. And so Baylor got 3 starters off the state championship team. Then they had 3 that came back. Mark Ballou and Bill Haley and Frankie Edwards. And they all came back. Frankie still had malaria. Mark had been in the Navy, and Bill had been with the 8th Air Force. So you had a team made up of 2 freshmen who could play now after the war and 3 seniors. And one of the things Bill Henderson said to me is the pitch they give nowadays, come and we'll turn this program around. It's big now to say that, and one big man, an aircraft carrier out there in the middle of the court, can turn a program around. But, I believe we could. And so we went from losing 22 games to winning the conference, and we were in the top 8 in the NCAA playoffs. The national title is Team Oklahoma Indian, now Oklahoma State, they call it now, beat us.
When you came to Baylor, they played freshman ball. There
Yes.
was a freshman conference, as a matter of fact. How did you feel about coming in and spending a year
No, now excuse me. No, excuse
There
me.
was no freshman league.
No,
when
no
you were-
freshman league. That's what I said a moment ago.
Okay, I was
Right
thinking-
after the war, freshmen could play.
Oh, that's
So
right. I
I
beg your
came
pardon.
right from Pascal to Baylor. We had on that team 2 freshmen and 3 seniors who had come back from the war.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that.
Then they made that change a little later. Now they've gone back to letting freshmen play. Yeah, but that was something that they did at the end of the war. Athletic director.
How did you feel about the returning veterans as teammates? You didn't know them yet, but how did you feel when you heard that there would be returning veterans?
Weird, you know, playing with old men. And they weren't old men, but one of them could barely jump, and one of them, you know, had malaria. But it was just super the way we got the mix on that team. And when you began to win, it began to snowball, and it was the biggest show in the country. Baylor hadn't won in anything in so long.
You mentioned that Bill Henderson's genius was in the mix of the team and organizing the team. Tell us more about that. What do you think he was doing as he
And the
selected?
personal relations. You felt like a human being, and he helped you in your relations to the rest of the team. And he had a pretty good knack for strategy. He gave us the right plays and formations and so forth, almost without exception.
How innovative was he?
Well, I don't think many coaches are very innovative. They're all plagiarists. They all pick up things at coaching schools. Well, this wonderful coach I was telling you about that taught me how to win, he came in and he said, "I'm your new coach, how you doing?" We met everybody, and he said, "Now draw me your plays." And I drew the plays for him, told him how they worked, and we won the state title with them. He'd tell you that. You know, it's the guys that make them work. I can tell you what Boston and Philadelphia are going to do tonight. I can draw their plays.
You mentioned that Baylor had had such a losing season the year before, 22 losses, and that
No win.
and you were going to turn the program around, and this was what you were thinking about at that time. What was the atmosphere on campus when you first arrived in terms of expectations of the athletic program, the talk of students when they thought about intercollegiate athletics, and how did you respond to that? You must have found it a bit depressing.
Well, you know, of course in Texas there are 2 sports, football and spring football. But really basketball overshadowed football in those, right in there, those 2 or 3 years. It's hard for you to believe that. But there was no expectation on campus at all, and it shouldn't have been. But I was young and foolish and thought we'd do it. And I lived in the gym. On campus was nothing to me. I just ate in Tomaine Tavern over there and went to class and worked out.
Tell us about the workouts over at Rena Mars McLean.
Oh, it's death in the afternoon. You know, I guess now something's air conditioned or something. Can you imagine working out 5 hours an afternoon all across the summer? I was going to summer school, by the way. I finished school in 3.5 years or something. I went to summer school that summer and had classes at like 8, 9, and 10. And then ate a bite, ate a bite and worked out 5 hours. And might have gone back some nights. And it was hard to get somebody to work out against, because these seniors had not yet come on campus. They were coming in the fall, and now here I am in the spring quarter and the summer quarter. And so I'm working out against some of the Waco High players that I'd played against, and just believing, you know, just dumb enough to think
We have well documented the schedules that you played in the 4 years, but what did you think about the opposition that you were going to come up against? Who did you think were going to be the tough teams when you came to Baylor?
Well, it's just the idea, I suppose, of playing college ball. The whole schedule. We played New York University in Madison Square Garden that year. That's got to thrill a Texan. His first trip. Then 2 years later, we won the Rose Bowl tournament in California. Beat UCLA in the finals. And all that Hollywood jazz. We did have a trip every year to I lived in New York City for a month, playing in the Olympic tournament, playing for the national title and then the Olympic tournament.
In 48.
In 48. So those were, but we were playing. The Baylor never backed off. We played good teams. We played a couple of servicemen teams that were, like Great Lakes was so wonderful. Well, the one
The Naval Station.
in Maryland was great, and then they had 5 All-Americans on this team we beat from down here, Fort Hood. Though we opened against Randolph Field, and I never will forget. Mr. Bill, he was kind of forgetful, and I was pretty tense before my first college game, and he called the starters' names, and he didn't name but 4. And I had been, starting forever, and he didn't call my name, and I just thought this is the end of the world. And somebody said, "Hey, what about Jack?" And he said, "Yeah, and you guard Clifton McNeely." And Clifton McNeely was the nation's leading scorer the year before. So I had my first college game, I guarded the nation's leading scorer the year before.
Tell us about that particular defensive job you did on McNeely.
I don't think he made 10 points, and he fouled out before the end of the third quarter. And we beat them and got rolling. And it went like that. Well, lost one game in the conference. Big Coke, he was 6'11". He beat us one night. And then you played up to Arkansas 2 nights running because of the expenses. We didn't have planes and the expenses of the trip and all of that. And we went over. We got beat on Friday night. I'm going to play them again Saturday night. And we went over and just sat around until we came up with a strategy. And Mr. Bill wasn't the only one. I was in on some things I thought we could do and couldn't do. And it was like Boston beating Philadelphia 40 points the other night, and then the next game they get beat 25. We turned the whole thing around and never lost another game.
How did you travel during those years?
J.D. Stovall, driving a station wagon a lot of times.
Stovall taught in the PE department.
Right. Train. We traveled in station wagons anywhere we could, and then when we went bigger, we went to California on the train. We went to New York on the train. We played in Kansas City. It was train. Train came right through here. It was a good connection. Good schedule, but of course nothing like going out there and getting on a chartered jet and being there in an hour and a half now.
It reminds me of something you mentioned at lunch yesterday. You said you never did learn how to play cards because everybody else, all the other team members were sitting around playing cards and you were having to study Greek.
Well, he used the term a minute ago, student-athlete, which is a great expression, but it's basically untrue. And but you see, I wanted so desperate, and I know that people at Baylor must have thought I was a bad student or dumb, but I tried so hard to be a good student. And if you go out there, you go over there and work out 3 hours, it is awfully hard to eat supper and then study 4 hours. It's hard to take Greek. And I was majoring in English and trying. I was in Sigma Chi. I was trying so hard. It's a very difficult thing. So, of course, I grew up in such a strict Baptist home. Mother never lit the stove on Sunday, and, of course, cards were taboo, and that didn't bother me. I didn't want to flip cards. I wanted to put the ball up against the wall. But when I should have learned to play cards, I was studying Greek. Machen's little green book under Tranum. On the train, the rest of them were flipping cards, playing blackjack. And so I feel like I'm virtually uneducated. My daughters have to tell me when there's a joke on TV about this hand trumping this one or whatever, they explain it to me. Yeah, that is true. But I did. I honestly did it, and Baylor was very conducive. I never. When I hear about the tutors now, I get this big mad up against my time. Oh, what I wouldn't have given for some of that. And I had some. Charles Welborn's sister Faye was a big help at times in English. Oh, I can remember taking a course from Charles G. Smith, the Wordsworth scholar. It was in Wordsworth, and I played at Houston the night before. Now get this, you get out of class, you go down there on the bus, you play rice, you ride the bus back, you're aching all over, you get in bed at 3:30, you get up, go take a test in Wordsworth at 11 o'clock the next morning, and he asked a question about intimations of immortality, which I had not read, but I thought, well, I'll bluff this one. So I was so sleepy that I thought it said imitations of immorality, and wrote 4 or 5 pages on the immorality that was rampant in Wordsworth's day and so forth, and turned it in. And so he called the class together when he graded the test, and he told that he had one student done something, and then he turned right on me, and I heard Doris Lingfield was crying behind me. He let me hold it so hard. And then he told me the only way you're going to pass this course, which wasn't quite true, is make an A on the final, and to make an A on his final was just virtually impossible. I was always trying to be a student athlete, but we didn't have any tutors.
That's the terminology of the NCAA today.
Well, sure, and I think it's great, and I wouldn't let some of these dummies in for basket weaving and this and that. But I just let them go on, and I'd form a league out there where they didn't go to college, or they didn't play professional, or just call it getting you ready to play pro ball.
How did you feel about the attitudes of athletes at Baylor at that time toward academic work? You were trying.
Well, it was a necessary evil for so many. What I had more problem with, I suppose, than anything else was I felt very schizoid, very split. You could go over to Brooks Hall, and they had those stairwells, and along this side would sit the athletes in their T-shirts in the stairwells, and on this side would sit all the ministerial students in their blue suits. Now, where do I sit? And so I've always felt sort of I'm a misfit. Tillich does better. I'm talking negatively. He calls it positively, on the boundary. And I've always felt like I was sort of on the boundary. Am I over here? See, we're doing 2 sessions, one on religion and one on athletics. I never knew sort of which way to go. Now, that was a big thing at Baylor in the 40s and the early 50s, which was the rift between the piosity and the jocks. But
how did you handle issues such as that?
I just tried. I don't know. How do you?
You were able to be in both worlds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a hard road to hoe. Believe me, it always has been.
We know when you came, you wanted to turn the Baylor basketball program around.
Yeah.
What were your personal goals in basketball here at Baylor?
I don't guess I ever thought I'd make an All-American team, and I had virtually forgotten about the Olympics, so I didn't think I'd get an Olympic gold medal. The last time they had the Olympics was '36, so that wasn't on my mind. It was just something that I did, and I think did well, and with such sheer joy. It was almost like, I don't know.
Many athletes arrive with personal goals such as a free throw shooting percentage or
Oh,
a field goal shooting percentage.
we weren't into that, and that's part of what's wrong. I haven't seen Baylor play
I was going to ask,
in
how
years.
conscious were you of statistics at that
We
time?
were not. And I might have been the leading scorer, but couldn't care less. I had Mr. Bill say to me, "For God's sake, shoot." I mean, you got to say to a guy now, you know, the only way you keep him from shooting is break his arm and down in the dressing room. They come out of the dressing room pumping it up with a sore arm. And we were a team. Basketball is a team sport. It's no fun any other way. As soon as I quit playing, I quit. Well, they say, why don't you play? Well, it's like the fastest gun in the West. Everybody wants to shoot you down and hurt you. And I wouldn't look unusually good unless I were playing with Johnson, who could read my mind, and I could read his. We knew how to fill the lanes without talking. We practiced for...
You had learned that in high school.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, we didn't learn to fill the lanes. I think I taught Baylor how to fill the lanes after playing with the Olympic team. We never had the trailer until I learned how it worked playing with the Olympic team and told Mr. Bell.
At what point, this is looking ahead a little bit, at what point did you begin to think that the Olympic team might be a possibility for you?
I just wanted to beat everybody. I just was still crushed because we didn't beat Kentucky for the night. Think of getting to the national finals. You never get over that. I hate to go through Kentucky now. No.
So that
when
game in
Kentucky
Madison...
plays on TV, my wife says, well, I know you're going to suit up today. I'll leave you alone. Goes on out of the room. You know, she doesn't even want to be around. Of course, you get so close. You know, then I knew, when I was in New York, how they were picking it, and somebody was going to make it.
The Olympic team.
Yes. But I was so badly hurt. It was kind of down from Kentucky beating us, but I had torn the patella tendon off the end of my kneecap and chipped my left elbow in Kansas City. And I played that whole tournament with this arm wrapped, and I guess if you'd asked me, I wouldn't have thought that I had much of a chance. But I think the real secret was not so much in the statistics, because we could look it up. I don't imagine I scored a great deal. I couldn't shoot with that arm. But evidently they saw and they knew that I made a contribution, and they were trying to mold a team to win the gold.
How did it feel to be selected for that Olympic team?
Well, it felt like I had to go get all the shots and then pass out in class. I got all my shots here and then went to English class, and they woke me up. After it was over, I passed out. It's very hard to be an athlete, a student athlete. It's very difficult. And I tried with the scheduling of the winter quarter to schedule it right. And the faculty was marvelous. I even got special permission from the faculty for missing so many days in the beginning of the spring quarter in '48, because I was being fitted for the Olympic uniforms and all of those things. They were perfectly marvelous. But it is a very hard thing to do.
How much information did you have about the Olympic team before it began to get together and work out?
Well, the head coach and the Olympic committee sent me materials on getting the passport. I never had a passport. And all these things, what to do, what shots you needed. And then the main thing that I was told was, we're going to divide the team, the squad, into two units and play each other in 3 locations. We played in Kansas City, in Tulsa, and then we played on a football field, played for 40,000 people. That's pretty good back then. They brought the playing court over from Louisville, put it on the football field. It seated 42,000, I believe, and we played outdoors.
And where was this?
You had to kind of check the wind before you shot. In Lexington, Kentucky, we played divided that way. I was told that my job would be to guard Ralph Beer, which was he's probably of his size and in his day the best that came down the pike, and we squared off evenly the whole summer. That was the main pressure I was getting from the head coach.
As the time approached for the trip, what preparations did the team make?
I went and lived in Bartlesville for a month and worked out every day with them. And the other contingency...
With the Phillips team?
That's right, and the other contingency worked out in Lexington, and then we began to play.
How much contact did you have with Adolph Rupp before you went?
Well, just speaking before, but a great deal of contact as he was assistant coach on the team, and then we kept up very well across many years with mutual respect. And when Adolph was given, they honored him with the Sugar Bowl tournament dedicated to him. He asked me to come sit in his box with him in New Orleans for the tournament. So kept up with him. Not a great admirer of his.
When you think back to your basketball playing days, what do you consider to have been your best shot?
Shot?
Yes. What was your favorite shot out on the court?
Well, just anything I threw up there, that went in. Whatever fit the situation.
I'm saying this, I'm asking this knowing that the two-handed shot was
on its way out.
Was in, but still...
And not my favorite. And I guess I got more kick out of just blistering down court on a fast break, filling the lanes, and you end up then with a crip shot or a layup. We didn't try to dunk it. I think dunking the ball is a lot of foolishness, basically. If you need to do something to intimidate somebody, if that helps, fine. But otherwise, it's just it's a circus. It doesn't matter how hard you rip it through there. It's 2 points, whether it just tips over the edge and goes in or whether you dunk it. And we did not dunk it then. Had a lot of people that could.
When you were selected for the Olympic team, what difference did that make in your life here at Baylor? You mentioned the faculty being very helpful.
Very much so. Well, about the time I was selected and ready to go, Baylor turned out. School was over, and then I went.
The spring of '48.
Yes. I was, the way I found out about it, I knew they were going to pick, and I didn't know when, and I got on the elevator in New York City and looked down at the New York Times. They stacked them, in the elevator so that the elevator operator would sell them. And I looked down, and on the front page it said my name and Ray Lump were the 2 collegians picked, and the reason Lump was in the headline. And he was from NYU, and that was local news. And so when I stepped off the elevator, then there were people saying congratulations. But I didn't know anything about it. Just happened to glance down. It's a funny feeling.
Any Olympiad can be exhilarating. You were playing in the first one since 1936.
Right.
Crossing the Atlantic for the first time. How did it feel once you got there and began to participate in the Olympic events?
Well, I went to everything. I was so interested in track and field, I'd dash in on the tube and watch that and then get back for workouts. Truth is, we didn't have a hard time in the first part of the tournament. And it gave us a chance to see some other things. But there's nothing like an opening day parade. My goodness, take a 21-year-old Texan.
What was that parade of the nations, the parade of the teams
That's what I'm talking. 90,000 people, the king and queen. And then you see, I got to speak on the national hookups and do the Olympic sermon, and on top of all of that, got to go to Buckingham and meet the king and queen and Prince Philip and now Queen Elizabeth and Margaret and Lord Mountbatten and all the rest, the old Queen Mother. And so, you know, I did it all. Then after that, we went over to Paris and celebrated on Philip's 66. I went to a party one night, I'm sure, cost in those days $10,000.
Where was this particular party?
At the Lido in Paris. Now, since you asked me, I'll tell you.
The games must have been almost anticlimactic with such events going on around you.
One of the things, they were and they weren't, because we were all in it together. One of the things I did, by the way, took the whole Olympic team to hear James Stewart preach. And that's what led us to go back, some Baylor students, to the New College and University of Edinburgh the next year. But he was thrilled to death, and I had him as my guest to the games. He told me then the story of Chariots of Fire. Asked me, did I know it? I said, I've heard a little. And he told me the whole story, and now they've made this movie that's won the Academy Award.
Tell us about the championship game.
It was easy. We beat France 41 points. I swapped ties with the French captain, still got it. I don't have that ball. I got the ball. The toughest game we had was in the semifinals. We only beat Argentina 2 points, and the team gave me that ball. I have that ball. The ball, by the way, would very much interest you. You know, we have last-built balls now, but you have to play the Olympics like the next time they come up is 84. You have to play by the rules made at the 80 games. Well, what happened to us was we played the 48 Olympics by the rules made in 36. And so when they specified the ball, the best ball they had, it was laced and it bounced crooked, and it was very difficult for us to get used to and control it. Another very interesting thing is I got to sit in on some of the rules meetings. In fact, Bud Browning and I got close enough to where he asked me to come to Phillips and make a career of their recreation, what would be called a leisure program.
What important decisions did they make in the rules meetings that year?
Well, goaltending. You see, goaltending was not legal here in the United States, but in 36 they never thought about it. So when he took me with him to the meeting, he made the proposal that the rule be changed, and the Russians, because he made the proposal, said, no, you know, and I said, you know, they were arguing, and I said, but won't you take it up again tomorrow? And we'll show them tonight. So at night, we didn't shoot from the center line, two-handed set shots normally, but Ralph Beard and Lou Beck and I went out there and started popping two-handed set shots, you know, and then we let our biggies come out and just swat them away like flies. And the next day I went back to the meeting, and the Russian had his pencil in the air, and he wanted the floor, and he wanted to propose that we ban goaltending. And that's how it happened.
Fascinating. Tell us about receiving the gold medal, about that moment. What were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, what do you think? You know, I knew what it would look like, but I guess when I looked down, I saw the sweat and the blood and the tears first. You know, because I knew what was in that. Coaches and friends, and my father, who had played basketball at Baylor, and then I never knew him. He died of blood poisoning playing basketball, got a blister on his foot, and penicillin would have cured it now. And, I
They
think
played the national anthem.
Yes, yes. There is a feeling even beyond the school ties you can't imagine when you play for your country. Don January, the pro golfer, and I have been friends ever since he was a little red-headed boy sitting on the bench at Sunset when we were winning the state title at Pascal in Fort Worth. He lives in Dallas. He told me about Freddie Haas, the pro golfer. Well, he wasn't interested in the Ryder Cup. Good gosh, he'd lose money probably playing in it. No, it's a bunch of bull, and who needs that? And they ran the British flag up and played God Save the Queen, and they ran the American flag up and played the Star Spangled Banner, and Freddie Haas topped it 40 yards off the first tee, so choked up. Now, I don't know if that's hogwash or emotionalism or whatever. I don't know how to say it, but it is more to play for your country than any other thing. It just is. But looking at the medal, I didn't see the medal. I knew what the medal would look like. I didn't see the medal. I saw these other things, I guess, first.
How did Baylor respond to your winning?
They couldn't care less, really.
Dr. W.R. White was quite a sports fan and
Yeah.
was very proud.
What I mean is, see, Baylor was not in session in the
Right.
summer. They were running AP stories about my meeting the Queen and scoring points and this or that, but this wasn't earth-shaking. He kept up. I really don't remember much to do over the medal. It is unseemly of me to show it. I have never shown it to anyone, but my wife will, and upon request I've done it. You know, I mean, if they insist that they're going to, I don't think you go around showing your medals, you know, but I have been known to show it to a group, or have it there for a group of young athletes to see or something. And most of the time, whatever part of the world you're in, it's a scarcity.
Before we break for